My name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guy Live Daily News. Put your thoughts into the chat about the different types of animals, and let's head into the first article. So from Earth.com, tourist finds 400,000-year-old giant sloth femur in Argentina. A 400,000-year-old giant sloth femur was discovered in Argentina, preserving rare muscle marks that reveal how these ice age giants moved. Scientists have uncovered a remarkably well-preserved thigh bone from a prehistoric giant sloth after a chance coastal discovery exposed the fossil within a cliff face. The fossil is dated to about 400,000 years ago. Okay, so this is towards the last probably 392,000 years of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age itself. And we have a wide variety of different types of animals roaming South America in general, as well as a wide variety of other regions of the earth. But especially here, you have different species of saber-toothed cats, different types of proboscideans, especially the mastodons, and also a wide variety of different ground sloth species. The intact surface preserves muscle attachment marks that rarely survive in exposed fossils. This offers an unusually clear record of how one of South America's largest ice age mammals was built. The protruding mass of orange stained bone along a cliff near Santa Clara del Mar revealed the upper portion of a giant sloth femur still embedded in coastal sediment. Examining the exposed fossil, paleontologists at the Lorenzo Scaglia Municipal Museum of Natural Sciences confirmed that the bone belonged to a giant ground sloth and documented its unusual completeness. So the femur measures roughly 31 inches, or referring to the thigh bone, or 79 centimeters long and retains clear surface ridges where muscles once anchored to the living limb. Okay, let's bring up Megatherium because apparently they do not want to show what this animal is, which is quite odd. So Megathrerium. Now, technically, this giant ground sloth is one of the largest species to exist over in South America. It doesn't ever seem to have reached different parts of North America, however, not really even extending into Mexico for the most part. But it would have coexisted with different species of mastodons, like the South American mastodon, possibly even earlier into its evolution, the different species of gomphotheres in the region and as well like different species of saber-toothed cats such as possibly the homotherium and smilodon populator as well as even smilodon fatalis in different regions. Megatherium has also been found in different areas of Uruguay, Peru, Brazil, even further north into Panama and different parts of Costa Rica. Towards the northern part of its range, it would have coexisted with other species of large ground sloths such as the Aramitherium. Possibly didn't come into contact with certain medium-sized species such as Miracononyx. Well, this is a very odd depiction of the sloth. It seems like he's having a walking issue. Um, but I mean, very likely this animal would have just walked on all fours. Wasn't capable of running. It has very short, almost non-existent ankle bones compared to its body size, and it would have walked on the sides of its toes. So, much like with what you see in the different species of tree sloths today, except tree sloths hold their bodies or their overall core much closer to the ground. Giant ground sloths would have held their core in a more upright sort of stature. And they seem to have been, for the most part, herbivores, but with certain incidents, at least in the fossil record, it seems that Megatherium itself might have been somewhat omnivorous, so possibly scavenging from different species of large herbivores in the region.
Fish Flakes 45 just gave you a it looks like a $10 super chat. Said, "Thank you."
Well, I really appreciate that. Now I'm thinking of lunch too. So, I will say though, I mean, mentioning these different types of feeding behaviors, it doesn't seem that the ground sloths, like there's any evidence for them being piscivores or feeding on fish. Same thing for even the saber-toothed cats, as well as like not even just Smilodon itself, but different species like Homotherium. There were different species of large bears in the region, however. There were short-faced bears such as the Arctotherium and Tremarctos. In fact, let's bring up the smaller species. It's been a while. And basically, it is likely the predecessor to today's Andean short-faced bear or spectacled bear, which is a living species of Tremarctos. Tremarctos. I'm not exactly sure about the specific species, but possibly both might come up. He is definitely the larger of the two. He's probably pushing somewhere between 800 to 900 pounds, if
Wait, are you
not
talking about him?
no, well, no, he is a species of Tremarctos, but not specifically the spectacled bear of today. He did exist back in the Ice Age, but he occupied a much smaller niche.
Hold on. Oh my god, I cannot pronounce your name.
I mean, it's just a little funny guy.
Order no, no. Person said, "Yo," and I can't pronounce their name.
Well, hey, fellow theropod.
Hold on, let me see if I can pull it to find it. Sorry, it happens to me sometimes.
Yeah, spectacled bears of today really rarely reach over 350 pounds or pushing a little over 170 kilograms. And they occupy higher altitudes of different areas of Ecuador as well as Peru. They're not really existing beyond those regions. And even when it came to their historical range, um, they had a much smaller region compared to most other species of bears around the world. Like, even if you're looking at Asiatic black bears, which are a completely different species of bear compared to the Asia and the American black bear. And brown bears have the largest home range overall, even though they are split off into different genetically distinct subspecies. It doesn't seem like the spectacled bear has any distinct subspecies. It's just they're very closely related to each other, at least within the population, which is
Oh
also a
wait, this
guess at the
wasn't what
moment.
you wanted though?
No, not specifically him. It would have been more just like drawings of the older species of the.
Tornadoes?
I don't know. Um, you can bring it up.
No, same thing. Hold on.
You could look up like Ice Age Tremarctos. He might pop up.
Florendus?
That is, I believe, one species. Not cave bears. Cave bears seem to be non-existent over in the Western Hemisphere, or at least looking at North America and South America. But short-faced bears were very much dominant throughout North and South America. So you had it where they were towering over today's polar bears and even Kodiak brown bears for the most part. Depending on the species, they would be smaller. This would just be Arctodus simus, very likely, though he roamed different parts of central United States, even into Canada, but doesn't seem to have really inhabited the coast, at least over in British Columbia and Alaska.
Okay, yeah. Well, hold on. I keep getting that
That is weird. It brought up Arctos, but I mean
keep getting the
Arctodus.
other bear.
Um, e- hmm. I'm trying to think of who else we could possibly bring up, like within the bear
Is
range.
this still him?
Yeah, it's still Simus.
Hold on.
Arcto also.
Wait, I got him. Wait, unless this is the same thing.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah, it's literally Simus. It's giving him, I'd say, a little more of a sort of a roundish sort of a head structure compared to certain other depictions. It's still not a bad Arctodus Simus, but this is the bear that roamed much of central North America. And there was a subspecies of this animal that was much larger, basically like the Kodiak version of the American grizzly bear of today. Yeah, I mean, this is a life size replica of, well, life size reconstruction of the animal. So on its hind legs, with the smaller species, this model might be a bit oversized. Maybe not so much with the coastal species, which could probably reach somewhere between 12 to 13 feet in height on its hind limbs, or pushing around 4 meters. So towering over the tallest polar bear, which is or which was like back in the 1950s or 1960s, about a little over 11 feet in height. I think it was actually approaching 12 feet. We're pushing like 3.3 meters. And Arctodus simus might have been able to reach around 10 feet. I would still be pushing it, but it was very tall when it came to being quadrupedal. It has some of the longest legs compared to its body size of really any species of even Ice Age bear. So like standing on all fours, it's probably reaching somewhere between 5'10" to maybe 6'1" or approaching around 1.8 meters. And it also seems to be mainly a carnivore. So going after different species of horses back in Ice Age America, different species of Ice Age camels like the Titanops or Camelops. Let's see who else. It could have also have preyed on occasionally the ancient woodland bison of the United States or even southern Canada. Also, it would range down into different parts of Mexico. So roaming over different areas of like Oklahoma, Montana, definitely California, over into Florida as well. I know I keep mentioning just the central United States, but it would have roamed different parts of the east too. Megatherium was probably not a part of specifically Arctodus simus's feeding behavior, or at least diet. Arctotherium might have occasionally gone after younger megatheriums, considering megatherium could reach over 5 tons. So likely at full grown, even like a pride or a pack of saber tooths would have a really hard time um, not being disemboweled by the giant sloth themselves. So they could easily probably be mortally injured just by a swipe of the animal, considering it had claws that were larger than most dinosaur claws on average. And I'd say, like, when you're looking at the thumb claw or possibly even the index claw of these sloths, they're larger than certain many claws of different species of sauropods. So, really, even a very robust cat or one that's just, healthy and very good shape is at very high risk for just being fatally injured of being hit by one of these animals. So, such preservation. Oh, okay. Well, that's a bear.
Oh, wait. Oh,
That's
I was.
that's that's a short faced bear.
Oh, I.
There was also like the oh gosh, like Cynops? I'm trying to think of that other species of ground sloth that's smaller than Megatherium or even Aramotherium, but still reaching somewhere around 3 tons, which is still like a larger species of ground sloth. But occasionally, the larger short-faced bears down in South America would have hunted them. Like we do have evidence from bite marks on certain bones of the giant sloth. So such preservation is uncommon in coastal fossils. Oh yeah, I guess
Sorry,
being
buddy. There it is.
oh yeah, well, if this is specifically him, probably is. But this animal could reach probably somewhere around 15 to 17 feet in height or pushing possibly around 5 meters.
Wait, is that what's at HMNS?
No, that's an Aramotherium.
Oh,
He's not far behind. Sometimes he actually competes for the largest species of ground sloth. It can just depend on the individual, but usually Megatherium holds the title. Maybe it's that certain species of um, trees down in Ice Age South America, maybe even different types of shrubs, would have had or simply contained more nutrients compared to the different species of trees over in North America. However, you still had large species of like American mastodons, for instance, probably feeding on some of the same species of trees as the sloths were eating, considering they had teeth that were a bit more similar to the sloths than compared to the different species of mammoths that they would have coexisted with, such as the Columbian mammoths. But Columbian mammoths are rarely, if ever, feeding on different species of trees. They probably avoided them entirely, considering when looking at their dental plan, it is not meant for feeding on exclusively leaves or really leaves at all. They seem to have focused on different species of Ice Age, or I guess more of like the possibly mammoth steppe of the United States, which would really have only consisted of different types of grasses, but also seems to be in many cases just open woodlands. It is also interesting when looking at like the different species of carnivores in South America and North America. And when you're comparing animals like Smilodon fatalis and Smilodon populator, it seems to be that Smilodon fatalis, being the medium sized member of the Smilodon genus, was really suited for hunting in more open woodlands. So it would have relied on a bit more, I guess you could say, shelter or just simply tree cover than compared to Smilodon populator, who was much larger and seems to be a more of like an open grassland type of a carnivore. So you could say though it can like vary depending on certain like subspecies of lions today over in sub-Saharan Africa, with some inhabiting ecosystems with more of like an acacia tree sort of a landscape, and others where it's just literally open plains. But there's also more going on, considering they don't differ too much in size. You're looking at Smilodon fatalis, which is somewhere around maybe a little over 500 pounds. There's certain 600-pound estimates, or pushing a little over maybe 240 kilograms. Smilodon populator probably reaching around 7 to 800 pounds, or probably pushing maybe 370 kilograms. So a femur. Oh wait. Okay. So meeting the bone can help scientists refine reconstructions of the animal's anatomy before further material is recovered from the unstable cliff. A femur carries the body's load, so its shape records how a massive animal stood, moved, and balanced. Across the shaft, shallow grooves mark where muscles once pulled on living bone, leaving clues about force and posture. Those marks matter because they let researchers compare this animal's build with earlier giant sloth finds from the same coast. With so much surface still readable, the bone may narrow arguments about movement that skeletal mounts cannot settle. Iron rich, something about orange and intact. Maybe it's referring to the type of color the bones, or probably certain minerals that the bones came into contact with as they fossilized. Actually, I'm going to read this a bit, and then I want to bring up some animals, marine animals that lived much earlier in time, and but have been preserved with a wide variety of color. So, iron rich, waterlogged ground can stain bone orange while also slowing the damage that air, salt, and wave exposure usually cause. Here, that chemistry seems to have sealed delicate ridges instead of scouring them away after the animal was buried. As a result, the fossil still shows fine relief rather than a rounded block stripped of anatomical detail. That unusual preservation turned a chance beach find into evidence suited for reconstruction, not just display. Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably a similar instance. Let's look up like preserved colorful ammonites. Considering it seems to be with the ammonites that they or we have some of the most colorful different specimens of marine animals compared to most other species of creatures from the fossil record. Now, I could be off maybe when it comes to like different species of trilobites, but usually trilobites are preserved as being rather dull. Well, this is one coloration. Seems to be more of like an amber sort of a look. Still looks good. Um, it almost has like a honey look to it. Oh yeah, so this is one of the other more colorful sort of looks. So it's simply due to different minerals that are being mixed into the specimen as it fossilizes over time. And also, same thing for the variety of different patterns and exquisite specimens like this individual occur. So this is a real, yeah. All these are authentic ammonites. Yeah, it is interesting. Like especially these green, light blue, orange, probably a little bit of red. Colored individuals. Oh, yeah, and also, like, this distinct, like, crystallization that occurs within, like, the inside, like, the interior of the ammonite shells. It's quite amazing. Oh, yeah, this looks good too. More red on this individual, and also distinct, rigid structures towards like the bottom part.
Yeah, I'm
Also,
just showing this because it's amazing looking.
now one thing I don't know is if in some cases there are a wide variety, especially of the truly colorful ones, but even the ones where it's just a variety of patterns and a more crystal sort of a form. If there's a wide variety of them that are found at once in the same place. Yeah, this is still a good looking specimen. Definitely shows how abundant and successful these animals were during the later Paleozoic era and into the entire Mesozoic.
This is huge.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to tell how large it is in this instance, but
It's sitting on a desk next to a magnifying glass.
oh, yeah, okay, that's definitely not a small ammonite shell. These would have been an important food source,
How
however.
large did these get?
So the ammonites, it seems that one of the largest that we have discovered was either from one was from the late Jurassic, I think pushing somewhere between like 155 and 160 million years ago. So shortly before dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus, Allosaurus, and Diplodocus would evolve, but pushing about the size of a tractor tire and the rear tractor tire. Um, Now the weight, it had to have been somewhere around maybe 1 to 2 tons. It was an immense,
How'd they even move that?
yeah, ammonite individual. Unless that was also maybe including the sediment. But there also seems to be, different large individuals from the late Cretaceous period, so pushing somewhere between 66 and 100 million years ago. Just not entirely sure about these specific specimens that I'm thinking of, and how old they are. But on average, I mean, I'd say they're around the size of at least the front tractor tire, which is not huge, but it's still larger than this specimen we're looking at. Okay, well, here's one of them. Yeah, this is probably coming from Jurassic sediments, at least judging by the coastline. Wondering if maybe this even came from England too, because I believe also some of the large. Yeah, wow, yeah, that is huge. I mean, even the others on the side, like towards the left of it, are immense as well. That's quite astounding. This might be the specimen that I'm thinking of. Yeah, geez. I truly wonder how heavy that really is. So, in despite their size, these animals were probably for the most part feeding on plankton, and maybe occasionally there might have been instances where ammonites might have been feeding on certain species of smaller fish. They did have a beak like an octopus,
Or someone's having a love affair with one.
even other squids. Yeah, he seems to be very proud of his ancient pet. But ammonites, they seem to have first evolved a little over 365 million years ago during the late Devonian period, and would continue until the end of the Cretaceous period or the end of the Mesozoic around 66 million years ago. A big mystery as to why they happened to all of a sudden disappear at this point. But probably there's simply enough change in the oceans, maybe also had to do with nutrition, that they simply went extinct, despite them already existing prior to the dinosaurs. But we also see different lineages of other animals. For instance, this is more of a semi aquatic creature, but the different temnospondyl amphibians that evolved during the also very end of the Devonian period. So, somewhere between 355 to 360 million years ago, and they would also continue into the time of the dinosaurs or the Mesozoic, but only reach somewhere around 135 million years ago before sadly going extinct. Also, specifically, it seems to be in Antarctica or Australia. So, back to the Ice Age. Just thought I'd bring that up because it was mentioning what seems to be colored sloth bones, but only in some type of an orange, but we don't know exactly how those bones appear. In life, Megatherium americanum, the giant sloth species behind this vine, likely stretched nearly 20 feet or 6 meters long and weighed several tons. When it reared up, weight would have flowed through the hips, tail, and back limbs as it reached for food.
What?
Eh,
What?
um,
What?
yeah, it's not necessarily a necessary description. A 2018 analysis argued that the hind foot was less awkward than older mounts had suggested. I wonder what he means by that. That makes a clean femur or thigh especially valuable because it can test reconstructions of how the whole animal balanced and stepped. So maybe it's just a better preserved femur compared to other specimens in Megatherium. Rather than killing prey, the four claws worked as heavy hooks for pulling branches and holding vegetation within reach. Well, at least usually. Also, another thing they would have been used for was defending themselves against saber-toothed cats, bears, other sloths. Think of many instances outside of maybe mammoths and mastodons occasionally. Um, it tends to be left out that their own weaponry, at least referring to ground sloths, would have been used to help defend themselves against their own kind. Especially like during the rut, there might have been certain food competition instances, maybe even access to water during harsh dry seasons. So that would have been a very interesting fight, but I'm really wondering if either one would be able to survive. The skull and muzzle research, at least referring to the front part of the skull when referring to the muzzle, points to a selective feeder that likely picked leaves, twigs, and softer plant parts. These animals had enormous claws that are among the largest in the animal kingdom, said Matthias Taglioreti from the Lorenzo Scaglia Museum. Its teeth kept growing from the base as they wore down, which helped the giant handle gritty food over a lifetime. Okay, so I guess let's bring up a South American mastodon. Yeah, considering you might have had it where, like over in North America, and you had different species of ground sloths, and also appears from more very recent discoveries in different parts of the Western United States, like in the Pacific Northwest, over in Washington State or Oregon. Different species of, like, per se, the Pacific mastodon, and
These guys are funny looking.
yeah, even over in Eastern Canada, seems like there's a number of new species of mastodons from those regions.
Wait, how many types of mastodons are there?
There seems to be, because beforehand it was just seemed to be the American mastodon, at least for over, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 centuries. No, maybe pushing 3 to 4. So since the 1600s, we have known about the American mastodon. Like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson were doing research on it. Let's see. And so the very recent decades have animals like the South American mastodon, and then even in more recent years, the Pacific mastodon and Eastern Canadian or even New England mastodons have appeared. Anyway, this is a good reconstruction of a South American mastodon over in different parts of possibly like Uruguay or Paraguay. This would be pretty realistic. I mean, they're going to be feeding on probably different types of palm fruit in the region. Actually, we do have also recent evidence of mastodons feeding on fruit over in South America, not necessarily over in North America, however, but probably because in certain regions, fruit would be a more available and just common source of food for the animals to come upon compared to over in North America with their northern cousins. So American mastodons are probably close to the size of the mastodons further north, probably reaching some instances of over 8 tons, and probably not also reaching a height of much more than 7 to 8 feet. American mastodons, well, mastodons in general, did not reach very tall heights for some unknown reason. They just simply seem to stay around the maybe 2.2 to 2.3 mark, 2.2 to 2.3 meter height mark. Yet they still compose of tusks well over 11 feet in length. They're pushing a little over 3.2 meters. Also had they still had short ears compared to their body size, despite living in very warm climates. I mean, South America, I think when most tend to think of the Ice Age and referring to worldwide, like they might even assume that Africa, pretty much all of South America, even actually certain, much of North America, you could say, especially including Mexico and the United States and Australia, like it's all covered in snow. Like the whole Earth is kind of like what it was well before. the Cambrian period, so referring to sometime between what 6 to 700 million years ago. I don't specialize in that time geological time frame, however, but there was a point where most of the Earth was in a massive ice age and much harsher than what we see in different parts of the Pleistocene, or between 2.5 million years ago and about 11,000 years ago. Um, but in reality, what you had throughout the Pleistocene or the most recent ice age is that much of South America, Africa, Australia was pretty much snowless, or at least snow was quite rare, almost many instances very similar to today. Now, you could say in certain areas of North America, if you're referring to the northern hemisphere, there was definitely um, glaciers today. Obviously, would be just a minor fraction. Now, there might have been certain very warm spikes during the ice age where it might have dwindled, or it would have dwindled the glacial extent to a major uh, just appearance. And the reason that would actually have benefited different animals is that now you have it where there are not all these thin migratory corridors they can move through, and it's just wide open. But that wouldn't last very long. Okay. So Santa Clara del Mar's cliffs had been yielding buried animal traces for years, not just loose bones weathering from the bluff. A recent Argentine study mapped fossil burrows along this coast and traced animal activity across more than 3 million years. Interesting. I wonder what these burrows are coming from. There might have been certain species of like smaller burrowing ground sloths, but I don't believe coming from a multi ton animal. A recent that long record helps explain why tourists, fishers, and children keep stumbling onto important bones in the same stretch. You can have it just depending on where you are in different parts of the world. Doesn't have to be the Ice Age. You could be hanging out in some part of the Proterozoic era or certain parts of the Mesozoic or the time of the dinosaurs, and just stumble upon different types of recently exposed teeth or different bones, like skulls in some cases. Let's see. So each new specimen gains meaning faster because earlier finds have shown the cliffs are a reliable archive and not a fluke. So the timeline of giant sloths. This Santa Clara animal died about 400,000 years ago, long before people reached South America, and long before the species became extinct. I am wondering if this is even possibly before the South American mastodons would have existed in the region. I mean, Megatherium would continue to exist until the very end of the Ice Age, though it might be also one of his older, um, how would I state that? It's just one of the oldest individual megatheriums to exist. So the timing matters because it places the bone deep within the giant sloth story, not near its final chapter. By contrast, later giant sloths survived much closer to the end of the Ice Age when climates and ecosystems were changing fast. Well, I don't think it's really a good idea to compare necessarily the end of the Ice Age and the incoming Younger Dryas event with really changes in ecosystems or climates beforehand, or at least in the prior 2.4 million years, considering you would have had like slight changes here and there, but massive temperature fluctuations in different regions. So you could say that many of the species of large mammals, like the mammoths, the mastodons, or even the different species of large cats, like the Eurasian cave lion or the American lion, were actually quite adaptable considering the massive changes in temperatures. But also, that really would have occurred in different parts of like the mammoth steppe, but further into like different areas of Canada, Alaska, different parts of Russia. So let's see. Arguments over what caused the demise of these giants have never fully settled because climate stress and human pressure overlapped. I think there really only would be so much over a hunting, you could say, even being caused by the people, considering it was not an easy task to take down a multi ton sloth. I mean, it's a very Thick hide, very likely. I mean, it's a big question as to whether this animal had a large amount of fat. Or now, considering it lived in a much warmer climate, it's probably less likely. Maybe certain sloths further north, like even possibly Erythrium, but even that's quite debatable. But also just the amount of energy, um, whatever they were using for their hunting techniques. There's only so much. I mean, it really wasn't until certain instances, like with per se firearms or just more efficient weapons beforehand, that overhunting was even possible. And I think the only other times where overhunting with much more primitive weapons would have been able to occur is in island situations where the animal is not very numerous and it also has a very slow reproductive strategy. And that seems to be like one of the only cases where it was even possible. So, a 2019 paper documented people hunting and butchering Megatherium in the Argentinian Pampas about 12,600 years ago. I just find it weird that people still looked at a sloth and thought, that would make a good sandwich. It's like, no, it wouldn't. Um, Even so, that evidence does not erase the role of warming climates, retreating ice, and changing habitats across the continent. Um, okay. So, is there anything else? They're just being a bit repetitive. So, for now, technicians are cleaning and studying the bone while the unstable cliff keeps part of the story out of reach. Once the first round of work ends, the femur is expected to join Santa Clara del Mar's regional fossil collection. Okay, I think that's it. There's nothing really else about the sloth. Did they even show us a picture? No,
No,
I
they
don't
only
think.
had the people.
Yeah, that okay. That was odd. Well, still kind of a mystery, but it also seems to be it was just a thigh bone. I think the question is like, how large is this specific thigh bone? Okay, well, let's head to another part of the Phanerozoic era. We're gonna head further back in time. So, from Sci News. Paleontologists find fossilized dandruff of feathered dinosaurs. Wow. Okay, that is shocking. Dandruff.
That's why the title of that just cracked me up.
Yeah, it's almost like astounding and a bit gross for some reason.
Head and Shoulders sells for
yeah.
blue.
Yeah, we need to help the feather conditions of whatever the dinosaurs had these and maybe up their hydration. Let's keep going. An international research team led by scientists at University College Cork, Linyi University, and China's Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology has found and analyzed dandruff fragments preserved amongst the plumage of Cretaceous feathered non-avian dinosaurs, revealing the first evidence of how dinosaurs shed their skin. Okay, well, you could say that, especially if you look at variety, probably all modern day birds, it's not necessarily too hard for them to shed their skin. They do it consistently also when you see them grooming themselves. They're usually pecking different parts of their wings, just their feathers in general, and quickly, flakes will fly off, which I'm guessing is what they're referring to as the dandruff of these different species of feathered dinosaurs. And the bigger question is, who is doing this? Well, they seem to be showing some species of Therizinosaur. They're, not giving a lot of feathering to these animals, but maybe it's an older picture. I mean, it's not bad in general. I mean, I think it looks really good. It's definitely giving them a very, lean sort of a look, which is very Therizinosaur-like. I think in some cases, maybe a little too lean. Like, you can see his rib cage.
Looks like he's starving.
Yeah, and there's a bountiful vegetation. So, that's strange. The team discovered the fossilized skin of three feathered non-avian dinosaurs. Baepisaurus, that's a smaller therizinosaur, Sinornithosaurus, and Microraptor. Okay, these are definitely not therizinosaurs. These are Microraptorids. And an early bird called Confuciusornis. Okay, this is definitely a distant relative of Sinornithosaurus and Microraptor. Still belongs to the Paraves lineage, like those Microraptorids and modern day birds, but it's its own distinct lineage. In fact, Confuciusornis might be a member of the Cretaceous bird lineage known as the Euantiornithins, but I might have to double check. So these creatures lived approximately 125 million years ago. Oh yeah, I guess that is something that's interesting is that they all were existing at the same time. There were much larger species of dinosaurs in the region, however, like Bioposaurus is reaching maybe like somewhere around 5 to 8 feet, or maybe pushing somewhere between 1.5 to maybe a little over 2.3 meters. So these, and were important members of the famous Jehol biota or the Jehol fossil basin or ecosystem. A rich ecosystem preserved in a rock formation cropping out in several Chinese provinces. It's almost like when looking at the Morrison Formation, I just think it's a good comparison. In the United States, it covers, even though it's really focusing on the late Jurassic period, so around 150 million years ago, it covers different parts of Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, I believe even to Arizona, and certain areas of South Dakota. So, um, I do wonder which one is larger, possibly the Morrison Formation. And we definitely obtain more of the larger species of dinosaurs from that area. Okay. Let's bring up a much larger species of dinosaur. This time, though, not even a therizinosaur. The uh Fucaronosaurus. So Fucui. Oh wait, no, I was thinking of a raptor. I meant the Q Wenlong. So Q-I-O-W-A-N-L-O-N-G. Should be a sauropod.
I think you left out an A.
Like Q.
Yeah. QIA.
Oh. It is quite strange with this early Cretaceous species of sauropod. So, this animal possibly coexisted with a later species of Mamenchosaurids over in China. So, this animal is probably only reaching about 50 feet in length, or maybe around 15 meters. Yet still seems to have probably weighed somewhere between 8 to 12 tons. So it was a medium-sized species of sauropod for the region. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is a good reconstruction. Possibly. It does resemble like another species over in Europe, also from the early Cretaceous. It has a very brachiosaur-like appearance to it. In fact, it might be part of the later brachiosaur lineage. Considering when you're looking at that head structure, it doesn't look very similar to any species of titanosaur. There were certain titanosaur species that had a bit of a more vertical or at least heightened type of a skull structure. It was quite minimal. Okay, in this case, he really doesn't. Also, his toes are rather splayed out, especially on his front foot. Even his claw is almost like that of a prosauropod to an extent. And his back feet sort of resemble stegosaur feet, which are completely different. Sauropod should have a very curved sort of a three-fingered occurrence, at least on their hind feet, whereas stegosaurs would have it where it's very short, stubby toes, sort of a formation. So, yeah, he's very mixed. And even his skull structure, it's almost like that of certain earlier depictions of like Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus. It's almost like somebody took Littlefoot and just stretched his skull and just stuck it on here. Or maybe it's supposed to be one of the grandparents. I'm not sure. But besides that, also when it comes to even the skin texture, that's actually more similar to the skin that we find on T Rex to an extent, except possibly the individual squares might be a bit smaller compared to what we're seeing here. But it seems to be with sauropods in general. outside of certain species that were armored, like different members of like the Strodiae or the Saltosaurs in general, that they would have had pretty much just basic smooth skin for dinosaurs. I mean, it likely wasn't exactly very soft.
There's almost nothing on this guy.
Yeah, that is quite odd. I would have actually expected a lot more of him, considering like he was possibly found like in the 1970s. So yeah, it is kind of strange. But yeah, he's basically a medium-sized species of sauropod dinosaur that was not feeding on any other dinosaurs in the region. He had teeth that were specifically designed for ripping off different species of taller ferns in the region that inhabited. Probably wasn't a dull scrubbing landscape like with what it showed in the other picture. Likely living in different types of conifer forests and probably adjacent floodplains. So let's continue. The paleontologists studied the fossilized dandruff from modern birds with powerful electron microscopes. So what's remarkable is that the fossil dandruff is almost identical to that in modern birds. That doesn't sound very surprising. I mean,
In another 20 years, they'll say it were fleas. It was fleas.
um, yeah, they could, but that's a very odd looking dandruff. But besides that, I mean, it's kind of terrifying. Now, you could say, I mean, you do have like very microscopic mites living like on your body and very likely on most other species of animals in general. But yeah, we're talking about, I guess, feathers, and a mite is very different from a flea. So even the spiral twisting of individual fibers is still visible. Oh, well, why I was saying is that this doesn't seem to be too surprising is that, I mean, when you're looking at different species of, especially like the preserved microraptorids that we have with preserved feathers, like Sinornithosaurus, for instance, Caudipteryx. Let's see, who else? You could even possibly take, though they might not be a good representation, certain smaller ceratopsians like Psittacosaurus, but they tend to have more of like a porcupine quill-like feather, not so much like with what you see in the different theropod dinosaurs. Certain species of earlier tyrannosaurs we have discovered with feathers, such as Dilong, Guanlong, Yui tyrannus. But considering birds are also dinosaurs, I would just assume to a major extent that they would have a similar sort of a look. I think the question is, the difference in texture, like, does it seem to have been a very lightly based feather, or is it one truly used for insulation? So said co-lead author Dr. Maria McNamara from the School of Biological Earth Environmental Sciences at University College Cork in Ireland. So the fossil cells are preserved with incredible detail, right down to the level of nanoscale keratin fibrils. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any modern birds in this depiction. It's just simply so A, E, and F. These are all the little Confuciusornis. And then the Bayiposaurus is B and G. That seems to be like a very big difference. Hmm. Like, it seems quite spread out here. And let's see, Sinornithosaurus C and H. Huh. I'm just wondering how they were specifically able to. That's just odd. Just seems like a major difference. And then D with Microraptor, all by itself. I partially don't know what to make of these. So the 125 million year old dandruff is the first evidence of how dinosaurs shed their skin. The Iposaurus, Sinornithosaurus, and Microraptor clearly shed their skin in flakes. So yeah, much like modern day birds. Um, yeah, I think I was just thinking of it with different species of mammals to an extent. So I'm like thinking of more like oil intact, at least in some instances. Whereas birds, it's just tends to be like simply flakes. But I think it's because usually in a lot of instances, or at least when it comes to dandruff and at least with a wide variety of animals, it tends to be that's like dehydrated, some sort of an infection. So, like Confuciusornis and also modern birds and mammals, and not as a single piece or several large pieces, as in many modern reptiles. Okay, so let's bring up this time a species of theropod. Fukuiraptor. So Fukuirap should be a type of megaraptorid. Nope. Apparently, although he worked for another species of, I think, Metracanthosaur way back, at least when looking at his skull
What
structure.
was he paid?
Um,
You
I don't
said he
know.
worked for him.
Well, I mean, he's definitely going to be transporting. So, I mean, through time. So, I'm assuming inflation's going to kick in. Probably two medium-sized sauropods every 2 days. Okay, no, it's not a good inflation balance. He's being given like two iguanodontid hatchlings like every hour. Um, I think the minimum wage was to put down the Carnosaur group and keep the Coelurosaur higher in society. I don't know. It's a bad joke.
How bad is
Anyway.
this?
Huh? Yeah, he's got a lot of issues. There we go. That's better. Phew. Okay. So Fukuiraptor is a member of the Megaraptorid lineage of dinosaurs. And it's a medium-sized species of Megaraptorid. It's also a member of the Coelurosaur lineage, so it also belongs to the same group of dinosaurs that Tyrannosaurs and Dromaeosaurs belong to. Oh yeah, that's a good reconstruction of the skeleton. It is interesting. It almost has like a Carcharodontosaurus, in my opinion, sort of a look to it, especially when you see the elongated vertebrae for this Megaraptorid. It's very different from later species of Megaraptorids. So this is also during the early Cretaceous of China. Megaraptorids were running around, it seems, over in different parts of South America, Asia, and Australia. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of them, at least when referring to the Southern Hemisphere over in Africa. If there is, it might be like certain fragmentary remains over in different parts of like Tanzania. But yeah, it's very different. Also, if you're looking at the skull, it's not as elongated as many of the later species, especially as you head into the late Cretaceous, like at around 75 to 80 million years ago with many species. Or well, it's not true. Actually, around this time, over even like I'm pointing to 120, 125 million years ago in Australia with Australopithecus. Now, Australopithecus has a very much more narrow jaw. I mean, he is, I would say, somewhat like megalosaurid or even certain Carcharodontosaur sort of characteristics with his skull. Now, I don't know how much of the intact specimen we actually have, but
I
this
didn't know
is
this was a painting. Wait,
no, it's a skeleton.
is it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, he's on, posts.
it's strange when I blow it up.
Yeah, I will say those, especially when you're looking, I'd say a very Acrocanthosaur sort of a, structure. I mean, still very different, but maybe for a young Acrocanthosaurus, he's not necessarily closely related to Acrocanthosaurus either. Acrocanthosaurus was part of the Carcharodontosaur lineage, and which is a member of the, Allosauridae lineage, and Megaraptors are part of the Coelurosaur lineage. So is though we have seen mutations or certain physical structures occur on a wide variety of animals that were not closely related to each other at all. And I'm not even just referring to other like different distantly related groups of dinosaurs, but even like when comparing certain dinosaurs to certain mammals and or certain other reptiles, and they might have a distinct type of a characteristic or a similar type. Okay, so yeah, he was a carnivore. So he was feeding on sauropods. Probably like younger Mamenchosaurs occasionally, which were reaching well over 100 feet in length in some instances or over 35 meters. So it's unusual to be able to study the skin of a dinosaur, and the fact this is dandruff proves the dinosaur was not shedding its whole skin like a modern lizard or a snake, but losing skin fragments from between its feathers. Added co author Professor Mike Benton from the School of Earth Sciences at the University of Bristol, UK. Just like human dandruff, the fossil dandruff is made of tough cells called corneocytes, which in life are dry and full of the protein keratin. This modern skin feature evolved sometime in the late middle Jurassic, around the same time as a host of other skin features evolved. If it's referring to specifically feathers, we do have from more recent discoveries of feathers existing back into the Triassic period, like well over 200 and somewhere between 220 230 million years ago. But it might be referring to something else. I don't think it's referring to the feather. Like maybe it's the dandruff or the protein keratin. No, wait a second. That couldn't be the protein keratin. That would be much further back. Hmm. There was a burst of evolution of feathered dinosaurs and birds at this time, and it's exciting to see evidence that the skin of early birds and dinosaurs was evolving rapidly in response to bearing feathers. Modern birds have very fatty corneocytes with loosely packed keratin, which allows them to cool down quickly when they are flying for extended periods. I think it also depends on where they're flying as well. 'Cause sometimes it, takes a little more than their, just genetically evolved mutations. The Corionocytes in the fossil dinosaurs and birds, however, were packed with keratin. Well, I think it's also making out that it's only these types of physical attributes in dinosaurs, certain dinosaurs that would have contained keratin. You would have had different species of dinosaurs, like per se Stegosaurus, Triceratops. They're at least the plates of Stegosaurus. It's even its own toenails, its beak, just like the horns, the beaks, the frills of Triceratops would have been covered in a layer of keratin. And in many instances, it would even have added length to the animal's horns, for instance. So, um, oh, so suggesting that the fossils didn't get as warm as modern birds, presumably because they couldn't fly at all or for as long periods. If you're talking about, well, the mid Jurassic, there doesn't seem to be any sign or evidence of different species of dinosaurs being able to fly. That seems to occur during the last 8 million years of the Jurassic, at least 150 million years ago, with the Archaeopteryx from late Jurassic Germany. Um, I think there is one other dinosaur I'd like to bring up, the Ichthyovenator. So Ichthyovenat. This dinosaur is definitely being paid with fish, but maybe occasionally iguanodontians for a bonus. Anyway, Ichthyovenator is a species. Oh, okay, this would definitely be a relative, but even for Spinosaurus itself, this is very far off. Like even when it comes to the upper end of the tail, yes, it does seem that Spinosaurus had one of the tallest tails compared to its body size of any species of dinosaur, even like different species of sauropods.
What do you mean by tallest tail?
Like simply when it comes to the elongated vertebrae along the caudal vertebrae of the tail. And you would have had like a much larger area of just overall muscle, not necessarily like elongated like vertebrae, but with the keratin. This could be, oh yeah, this is Ichthyovenator.
Who's
Wow.
this?
Hopefully he's just taking a nap. But yeah, I think it's just one resting. So this is during the early Cretaceous over in Asia, probably a little further south in different parts of Southeast Asia, like Laos, Thailand, Cambodia. And these animals were mostly piscivores, so feeding on a wide variety of different species of fish in the different floodplains of the early Cretaceous. And Ichthyomenator is a medium sized species of Spinosaur. So this animal is probably reaching somewhere around 23 to maybe 27 feet in length. Or pushing between 7 to a little over 8.5 meters, and probably weighed in around 1.5 to 2 tons. So it did not coexist with the much larger Spinosaurus species or European species such as Baryonyx and the like Suchomimus of northern Africa. It was existing during a completely different time and also a different part of the world. Well, this is an odd toy reconstruction. Also, he has a very odd sail compared to, per se, Spinosaurus. It's just I think, a good species to compare it with. There's also the Sigillomosaurus, which would have had a large, elongated back vertebra, very similar to Spinosaurus. But this animal, for some reason, it's almost like the Metricanthosaurs of the Jurassic, which had a somewhat, you could say, almost divided sort of back vertebrae, but I think in some cases it just has it where there's a slight incline towards like the pelvis region, and then it just sort of dissipates and becomes normal like the other megalosaur lineages or other Metricanthosaurs. Okay, this is an odd Jurassic Park 3 model. I mean, I guess for the look, it's fine, but definitely for an Ichthyovenator or even a Spinosaurus, it is very far off. Even Jurassic Park 3 model has much more muscular arms.
Is this from a game?
No, I think this is just somebody's model. It's not a bad reconstruction of an Ichthyovenator. Ichthyovenator, even compared to Spinosaurus, like I think it tends to be with like Spinosaurus, maybe even Sigillomosaurus, they tend to be looked at as having some of the thinnest or most narrow skulls compared to really any other lineage of theropod dinosaur. Even like Baryonyx itself. But Ichthyovenator probably is near the top of the list when you look at just the very thin occurrence of the skull. But it's really only meant for going after different species of fish. There's only so much pressure that these specific types of aquatic animals are putting on their mouth. But okay, maybe that's not the best explanation because you can have a wide variety of fish that even with certain species of fish eating animals that have a very robust jaw structure and still put a lot of pressure. So my question is like simply what type of fish and maybe even what pressure are they putting on these Spinosaurus skulls considering they were just very long and narrow. But yeah, all of them were good reconstructions. Okay. So this was good to see with the keratin or the dandruff coming in from these different feathered dinosaurs. Let's head to another part of the world and also further forward in time. So to the Cenozoic era from discoverwildlife.com. Camera traps hidden in Amazon rainforest. They just captured an elusive animal doing something unprecedented. For decades, the short eared dog has been regarded as one of the rainforest's greatest mysteries. Well, there he is. Is this that specific South American species of wild dog that occurs in different parts of like Brazil, possibly even north into Panama?
You're not asking me that, are you?
No. A new study has found that the elusive short-eared dog Etelocynus microtus, a predator known as a ghost dog that roams the Amazon rainforest, may be more widespread than previously thought. I think in this case, it means he's not as endangered. Data published in the journal Neotropical Biology and Conservation provides fresh insight into the mysterious Amazonian carnivore. Using almost 25 years of camera trap data, researchers have uncovered new details about the species' appearance, behavior, and distribution. Oh, well, actually, that's quite a bit of time. Wow. Researchers working in Bolivia and Peru compiled more than 500 records of the species and conducted 34 intensive camera trap surveys across Amazonian forests. The project generated 594 independent photographic records. That's actually surprising. I thought there were going to be many more, but I guess for how elusive this animal is, that makes sense. Though it's probably not mentioning the maybe tens of thousands or more that came along with this creature's pictures. So just came over saying, say cheese. Creating what is believed to be the largest collection of confirmed short eared dog observations ever assembled. Lead author Robert Wallace highlighted that the study is a wonderful example of how conservation technology and remote sensing, in this case, the intensive use of camera traps, can provide substantial data on one of the least known species of the Amazonian rainforest. Images show distinctive animal unlike any other Amazonian canid, with a dense coat that varies from dark gray to reddish brown, a large head, that's specific, small rounded ears, same there, and short legs. There's a lot of animals with this type of a look and a long bushy tail. So it also possesses partially webbed paws, a feature unique among wild dogs living in the Amazon. Okay, here he is. Never mind, he doesn't like smiling. I still respect him.
That was it?
Oh no. Yeah, apparently. Well, you know what he kind of reminds me of are certain species of mammalian carnivores from the Oligocene or the Miocene, Oligocene, and Eocene epochs. So the ones that would have actually, I think, belong to certain members of maybe the creodont lineage of mammalian carnivores. So more closer relatives of like the large 1,500-pound amphision. So it existed back in the Miocene of North America around 20 million years ago. So, despite its near mythical reputation, researchers estimate that around 15 short eared dogs occupy every 100 square kilometers of suitable habitat. So, I think that's pushing some around maybe 60 square miles. Not sure if that's a dense population or healthy, I should say. While still uncommon, the density suggests the species is more abundant than larger predators such as jaguars. Well, I mean, depending on how abundant prey is for the jaguars, I mean, this might not be too surprising. I would expect the animal in some cases to have a territory size of possibly close to this region, but that is, I would say 60 square miles is pretty large for a jaguar, although less numerous than medium sized carnivores such as ocelots. Well, that,
It's 38.6 square miles.
oh, 100 square kilometers? Okay, well, that definitely makes sense for a jaguar. This animal, well, I mean, 15 of them. So the question is, like, do they hunt in packs? If they do, I mean, that's not bad. Um, yeah, being less numerous than ocelots, I would expect that. Ocelots, really, like, as you head into South America, are much more common than most other predators. It's just once you get into South Texas, and then it's like, there's only maybe 50 of them in this small region, and they're very far, they're very cut off from other populations further south into different parts of like central Mexico. It's yeah, it's unfortunate. The study also provides a glimpse into the animal's daily routine, showing that unlike many rainforest predators that are most active at night, short-eared dogs appear to be primarily diurnal, with activity peaking between 6 a.m. and midday. Wow, maybe that was footage from earlier in the morning, considering that's actually quite surprising. Though there are many animals that tend to like have a shift of between daytime and nighttime priorities, or at least times that they're fully awake or at least actively hunting. It can also vary, like especially when you're looking at different tiger populations, and they might be scenting or just placing like different urine trails along their territory, like at night or during the day. Sometimes it also just simply varies by the season. So the research highlights the importance of intact rainforest for the species' survival, with the short-eared dogs showing a strong preference for terra firma forests. upland areas that remained above seasonal floodwaters. According to researchers, the dense, relatively undisturbed forest indicates why the animal is so rarely encountered by humans. I guess there's just a large area, also not often explored. Whoa! That was not what they were really explaining in the description. That's unless they were only pointing to the ears. It's not very red or orange at all. It's grayish. And actually has that more like typical creodont sort of a look, or at least related to like the amphision, but a much more narrow. Okay, that's not very amphision like. This is almost like an early canid almost. Um, from like 30 million years ago back in the Oligocene. Very narrow sort of a face. Like definitely has a more wolf-like appearance to an extent.
It looks sad.
Yeah, like he wants to hang out with the Coati or Coatis in the region. He wants to just go searching for fruit. I'm guessing he's an omnivore, and maybe even go after like maybe smaller crustaceans. The findings also suggest that protected areas play a vital role in safeguarding populations. Researchers found higher numbers of short-eared dogs within national parks and indigenous territories linked to protected areas than in unprotected landscapes. Okay, it's just being a bit repetitive with the rainforests. Okay. Yeah, very odd creature. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of this animal. So very interesting. Let's head to another part of the Cenozoic era. So, from news.mongabay.com, elephants adjust what they eat in altered habitats, signaling growing pressure. Well, he looks happy. So, I'm guessing this is occurring in some part of South Asia. It won't increase size.
Nope.
Oh, well. Judging by the length of the grass, however, I wonder if that's in part of like the floodland areas of northern India. So you also bump into greater one horned rhinos in the region, which do not have a very large historical range, even in Asia itself. It's very specific to those floodlands. So, Asian elephants are adapting to rapidly changing landscapes by diversifying their diets, a sign of resilience, but also a warning about the pressures reshaping their habitats, according to a recent study from Malaysia. Oh, okay. So, I guess we're down in Malaysia. I think there's around 2 to 3,000 elephants in that country. So, just adjacent to Thailand. Researchers collected feces from wild Asian elephants, Elephas maximus, across two distinct landscapes in peninsular Malaysia. One with primary and secondary forests fragmented by recent large scale logging in a hydropower dam development, and a second landscape transformed into oil palm plantations between the 1980s and 2000s, with a narrow remaining strip of forest. Elephant dung contains remnants of the plants the animals have consumed, so the researchers used DNA sequencing to reconstruct the elephants' diets in the two landscapes. Okay, so yeah, they've been doing this with other animals too, like over in sub-Saharan Africa, like different parts of Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and I think part of Angola with forest elephants. Yeah, and also the bandicoots and the potoroos of Australia. So the analysis revealed that elephants in the logging dominate landscape eat a wide variety of available plant resources across diverse habitats like grasslands, secondary forests, and regenerating vegetation. According to the researchers, the finding suggests that when disturbances in forests reduce the availability of their preferred plants, elephants could be meeting their nutritional requirements by expanding their diets to include a broader selection of plants available across diverse habitats beyond formal reserve boundaries. By contrast, elephants in the oil palm dominated landscape ate a much more predictable, narrow range of plant groups dominated by the cultivated oil palm crops. So, were they eating the palms or were they just having to feed on a smaller variety within the palm plantations? Maybe that's what it's referring to, which would make sense. The researchers say it's likely that elephants in palm oil habitats have adapted to the predictable availability of crops like African oil palm. This might expose them to conflict with people. I guess because they might be stealing the crops themselves. I mean, this is not uncommon for South or Southeast Asia for different Asian elephant herds to raid like different rice fields, um, different banana tree crop fields as well. Um, yeah, many. Oh, well, also there are different instances where they will steal off of people's trucks and they have to let them take the food. Apparently, at least over in India, um, you I don't think you can just drive off if the elephant's snacking off of your produce. So our findings highlight that elephants are highly adaptable feeders, but this flexibility often brings them to human-dominated landscapes, increasing the risk of conflict. Muhammad Saiful Mansur, study lead author from the National University of Malaysia, told Mongabay by email. Mansur said a key recommendation resulting from the study is to prioritize the retention of remaining natural forage, improve habitat quality, and identify as well as improve ecological corridors. I will say, at least when it comes to India, and you get kind of shocked when there is available corridors for elephants to move. Malaysia, I guess you could say it's a little less surprising, considering there definitely is more forest available, but it's also a completely different type of a habitat and climate. It doesn't have the same intense dry seasons like over in India. DNA based dietary data can help identify key plant species that should be conserved, restored, or even planted where necessary. So Mansur added his team is actively engaging with relevant agencies and stakeholders in Malaysia to integrate their findings into conservation planning and human elephant conflict mitigation efforts. Chase Ladue, an elephant biologist working in Sri Lanka who wasn't involved in the study, said the findings offer a rare window into how wild Asian elephants are coping with habitat destruction and degradation. I mean, I'd say they're just, being kind of violent, but I think that's just normal for elephants in general, at least Asian elephants. Um, Okay, they're just being repetitive with the elephants. There wasn't a lot that this article gave, like even when it came to what specific plants that they were eating, how many species. It was confusing in my opinion. Okay, well, we're going to give everybody a minute to put anything into the comments.
Akita Bear on Kick said, "What is the closest relative to Triceratops?"
Well, not including the other Triceratops species. Also, there's Triceratops horridus, which is usually the species that everyone thinks of. And then there's the Triceratops porsus, which evolved slightly afterwards. But it would be Torosaurus, which had the largest head compared to its body size of any known terrestrial animal. So Torosaurus was pretty much coexisting with Triceratops in the same habitat. It wasn't just in another part of the world. Over in Montana around 68 million years ago. Torosaurus was pushing somewhere around 25 feet or pushing 7.6 meters in length, and probably weighed in at 7 to 8 tons. So it also was one of the largest species of ceratopsians to exist. It actually probably became a bit larger. Yeah, that's okay. Is he a little downsized? Because I mean,
He's standing in front of it, though. So
yeah, I mean, Torosaurus does have a 9 foot long skull, or pushing, around 2.8 meters. S- So it's possibly, um,
oh, here you
I mean, this could be matching. It wasn't this big of a difference. Well, I'd say, okay, if you're comparing their skulls, maybe. Though I think Triceratops, even Triceratops porsus, which at least in the frill shape seems to be this individual on the right, though I will say this is based on a toy, but I don't think the one on the left is. However, Triceratops porsus would still have a wider frill. Also, the small horns, I think, are a little small for a Triceratops. Now, Torosaurus is interesting. It doesn't seem to, unlike most species of larger chasmosaurs, even the centrosaurs, I'll stick them into this conversation as well, tend to have small horns, at least in many cases, even longer horns towards the center of the skull. Pterosaurus seems to be completely devoid of horns, at least along the frill. There's those distinct side horns towards the side, but that's pretty much it. Same thing for Triceratops, at least with those side horns. Okay, well, if that's Porsus, maybe this makes sense. That's not a Torosaurus, and that is a younger Triceratops, you could say. Though I think the horns, at least the eye socket horns, are a bit long, but Um, the skull on the right might be closer to some species of earlier Chasmosaur, like closely related to Chasmosaurus, from around 75 to 76 million years ago over in Alberta, Canada. But that is not a Torosaurus. There's even added holes along the side. There, with Chasmosaurus in general, there are those two large holes within both sides of the frill. That's it. Like, there aren't any, extra holes, like, just beyond the side, and then even along the, just below the eye sockets. Also, the, bottom jaw. That is odd too. Um, Also, he barely, like, has a horn structure as well. And there shouldn't be any mini horns, like, along the, frill itself. So, yeah, that's a very odd hybrid. Jurassic World would approve, though. Um
Akita Bear said, "Are you streaming tomorrow?"
Maybe, but if so, it's going to be late tomorrow. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. You know what? Happy International Ground Sloth Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.